Well, it's obviously very closely related to my view about whether the stimulus worked or not. I think that my starting point premises are two for this. One is, I think, and again, have a book about this. I think that social science, non-experimental social science, including macroeconomics, has not been very successful in building useful, reliable, and non-obvious predictive rules that would tell us what will be the effect in a recession of different courses of action. And I think that each recession is somewhat different, and therefore laying out rules of how to deal with them will inherently be pretty abstract, because we'd have to do somewhat different things in the face of different recessions. The second premise I take to this is I believe it's a lesson of history, as well as one of the primary learnings of any experimental economics, laboratory economics I've ever seen, that booms and busts are inherent to a market. So I think we ought to accept the idea that if we have a market, we're going to have recessions. That doesn't mean we don't try and avoid them. It doesn't mean we don't try and ameliorate them when they happen. But trying to have a growing economy based on a market that doesn't have recessions, I believe, is a fool's errand. And in fact, the attempt to eliminate recessions entirely will lead us to create such a sclerotic system that, in fact, the crashes, when they come, will be much worse, that the system will become brittle and unable to adjust in small ways as time goes on, and then we will have, in fact, ultimately more severe crashes and slower growth over the long term. So, as I was saying in response to an earlier question, I think we ought to think about this fundamentally as how we have a strategy over time that allows us to minimize the effect of these disruptions and still create growth. And the key to that is having a resilient system so that when we have recessions, their damage is contained, it's minimized, and we can get back to growth as rapidly as possible. And the simplest thing I would say about how to have a more resilient system than we do is less debt. We have way, way, way too much debt of almost every kind in the United States. And if we just had less debt, the actual effects of recessions would be much less severe.